Brian Choper, and welcome to the Business of Music radio show. I am here with co-host Mickey Hill, who is a photographer and who runs her own organization called Support Live Music DC. Many of you know me. I am a musician first and foremost. I am a drummer. I've performed all of my life with either major performers or with my own bands. I started Big Shot Records in 2011, where we bring on artists for touring, festivals, concerts. In 2003, though, going back, I started Washington's Entertainment Connection, really a music agency for parties and weddings and wedding bands. And so from Washington's Entertainment Connections, from that success, I started Big Shot Records. And you can go to bigshotrecords.com to learn more about the bands that we have there if you want to get an idea of what I do and the bands that I represent. And two of the bands on that label I actually play with. One is the Brian Choper Jazz Project with Peter Canella, which is a Frank Sinatra tribute band. And the other is Nexus, which is a rock band that does classic rock, authentic classic rock of the 70s and 80s. Mickey, why don't you give them a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Okay. I am Mickey Hill of Support Live Music DC. Support Live Music DC is designed to highlight the musicians and vocalists in the DC area to keep them gigging, to keep them working, to let the various venues know that their entertainment needs can be satisfied with our local musicians and vocalists. It entails photographs that I take of the artist or group and a short article describing the artists and their performance. This is my way of giving back and showing my appreciation for the magnanimous amount of talent we have in the DC area. We have some of the finest musicians, vocalists, music teachers, and music mentors in the entire U.S., maybe in the entire world, right here in the DC area. My goal is to make sure that this is recognized.
So that's with the Support Live Music DC. That's your baby.
Yes.
And then you also have photo tracks, right?
Yes, I do. Photo tracks by Mickey Hill.
Which is your own business, bread and butter business of photos for, is it weddings, parties?
That is an event photography business.
Got it.
And we do just about all types of events.
Gotcha. So when you look at your event photography business, you're shooting what the client wants you to shoot, or do you get into bands and DJs with that too?
Sometimes, if it's required, but for the most part, the Support Live Music highlights the bands and the DJs, and the business Photo Tracks by Mickey Hill is basically the event photography.
Gotcha.
More weddings than anything else, but we will do other events if requested.
Okay. Now, the reason why I wanted Mickey as co-host of the show is because she has this incredible and unique perspective from being a photographer, being on the seat side of the band and looking at the band. And while I am looking at the band from the stage side, looking out. If you were, Mickey, to think, and part of the show is to give people an idea, a real idea of what to look for in a band, how you book a band, what's the best band for a party versus the best band for a concert, what are the best bands to see in town, and then from the band perspective, it's how do you write a song, it's how do you prepare for a rehearsal. It even goes into, we're going to even talk about how you plan a rehearsal, what type of music should your band be preparing, how a rehearsal should be run, really, the chemistry behind a band, what makes a band successful versus not so, and any aspect of the business, including how do you record a track, how do you sell your music online, how do you get people to see your band online, how do you promote it, how do you advertise it. There's so many aspects of the business. I would ask you, Mickey, from looking outside in, when you think a band is great, what are the criteria that you look at when you're thinking a band is great?
One thing that I look at is the band's dynamics. I look at the music dynamics. I like to listen to the beginning of the song. Are the changes smooth? The end of the song, is everyone on one accord musically when they do those things? I do take pictures of the band and photographs, but at some point I may do a video clip, and the video clip always comes out much better when the band is well rehearsed and all on one accord.
Mm-hmm. Now, we're going to be talking about national issues. We're going to be talking of the music business. We're also going to be talking about local issues. Of the local issues, what do you think makes a band stand out versus what do you think would prevent you from from mentioning them on the show? I mean, what is the good and the bad of what you see in the D.C. area as far as the music is concerned?
One thing that makes a band stand out, of course, the music has to be right and tight, but also when the musicians are into what they're doing, when they're moving and dancing and relating to each other, when they have rehearsed together so much that they know what's coming next. They don't have to look around and ask each other or look at a list, refer to a list when each song ends, or ask each other on stage, what are we doing next? Because those are things that should be worked out in the band's rehearsal.
So you're talking, I just mentioned, you have to have the chemistry. There's one of organization where the band has to be organized.
That's correct.
But now you're talking about the discipline of the musician to learn what they need to learn.
That's right.
And are you saying you can see when a band is organized and has that all together?
I can see when a band is organized and whether they gel together as musicians.
Okay.
Whether they're in one accord with the music.
Okay.
Or was it someone that they just met last night and said, come on in, we need you today.
And of all the bands that you see in the area, and I'm listening to you and I'm thinking about it myself because, I see that from my own perspective. But from your perspective, of all the bands that you get to go out and see, right, just by name, what would be the 3 or 4 or 5 bands that you think are the ones that you would right away say, hey, you got to go check them out?
Okay. One band would be Nexus because it's a rock and roll band.
She's biased because it's my band.
I grew up on rock and roll. My band used to play rock and roll. We used to play songs like Frankenstein, and that was something that I really did enjoy. I do like the Clones of Funk. They had me so caught up in their music that I actually thought the mothership was going to land right there at Bethesda Jazz, and so I kept the camera rolling. I just knew it was going to land.
Too much, but when you're hot, you're hot. Look at what you got. I don't care about the cold, baby, but when you're hot, too much, but when you're hot, you're hot. Look at what you got. I don't care about the cold, baby, but when you're hot, too much, but when you're hot, you're hot. Look at what you got. I don't care, y'all. I don't care about the cold, baby.
And I would say Robert Mousy Thompson and the James Brown Experience. They definitely have a very disciplined band. It gels, the music is tight, and it's almost like you're really seeing James Brown all over again.
on the website, TMB. Okay. So, and in fact, what I think we'll do is you can get us information, and we will put those bands on a repeat cast. I guess they call it a podcast of this show, plus information on bands that we think you should go out and see. We're going to be doing reviews of bands, and I guess we'll put videos up of the bands that
We will put videos up, yes.
Of the bands that you really like,
yes,
and admire.
Which means there will be many videos because there are so many bands that I like and admire.
All right. So you're talking about the chemistry of the band,
yes,
and I talk about the business of music. So one of the things that I look at when I see a band gelling is what brought them together and how that worked.
That's right.
And I guess it really comes down to meeting people in that rehearsal. So
all important rehearsal.
Yes. So of that 15% that you talked about that you thought might need polish,
yes,
and you suggested that they needed rehearsal, okay?
A certain type of rehearsal.
Okay. For me, my band experience is that you have people who need to be disciplined to know how to rehearse.
Yes.
And so that discipline includes knowing the music, knowing what's going on, and being prepared to know their parts in advance.
That's very true.
Okay.
Which means they have to practice on their own before rehearsal.
Okay. And your experience, and we were talking a little bit about this off show, but you were hearing how sometimes that doesn't happen as smoothly as it should happen.
It does not. I think with the rehearsal, it would benefit some of the bands to have, or most of the bands to have, an agenda. Mm-hmm. So when you come into rehearsal, you know what you're going to do while you're there.
Right.
If you're preparing for a show, then that rehearsal time should be spent running through what's going to happen at the show.
Okay.
So there won't be any surprises.
Okay. For me, the number one reason why I've seen bands break up is because of lack of chemistry, meaning people have to like each other and have to like what the music they're playing. And then they have to be disciplined that if there's music to learn and they go over the piece, they're not going over it and over it and over it. They're learning what they need to know, what they need to rehearse on their own. Take it home. They learn that, come back to the next rehearsal, and really what they're doing at that point is they're figuring out what mistakes they made or what they need to do to tighten up as a group. Okay?
That's right.
Okay.
But rehearsal at home is very, very important because I speak to musicians all the time because I would like to learn how to play saxophone. So I ask musicians, what is the key? What do you do? Where do I start? And the first thing they always tell me is practice, practice, practice. So before you even go to rehearsal, you have to be well practiced.
And we'll be right back where we will continue our conversation and answer these questions. And this is a small excerpt from my band, the Nexus Rock Band. A little excerpt from Hey Joe.
The first thing they always tell me is practice, practice, practice. So before you even go to rehearsal, you have to be well practiced.
For me, practice comes in 3 different forms. You have practicing what you learned at the rehearsal. It also means practicing the things that you realize, the fundamentals that you may be lacking to work a song. And it also means practicing endurance so that you can play a 4-hour set if you need to play a 4-hour set.
That's correct.
And the musicians that I speak to who perform a lot think that performing is practicing. And when I tell them that practicing is actually working on the things, the fundamentals that you need to improve upon, and performing is simply performing, and both are experience gaining. But if you don't practice, now when you're talking about practicing at a rehearsal, I am assuming you're talking about making sure they know their parts so that they come into the rehearsal and know their parts.
Right, they should know their parts before they get there. Mm-hmm. So that the rehearsal will run smoothly. You don't want to spend a lot of time at rehearsal talking,
right,
eating, playing on your phone. You don't have time for that. Some of these rehearsals, the space has to be paid for.
Yes.
It's not like rehearsal that you can go to someone's basement all the time and it's free and you're at their parents' house. Sometimes you really have to pay for this rehearsal time. And so you want to make as much, as you can of that time. You don't want to waste
You told me about the guy who comes late and has a McDonald's bag in his hand.
Yes, you can't come in with McDonald's late, and you can't come in and talk on the phone. Rehearsal is not for that.
Right. Now, for example, when I started Nexus, I started it because I met Bruce Packett, an Annapolis guy who played guitar, and I realized he could really rock out with the guitar, and I thought this would be fun to do. For me, it's a fun band to be in. It's not work, it's fun. And then Ryan came along on bass, and he just knew how to glue it all together. And as you just heard, and we'll let people hear this a little later, the continuity of the band is really smooth. It sounds really solid.
It sounds full.
The first gig we did with that band was only 3 weeks after we met. And that was because we got together, and I was the one who knew the least of that music. And at this point, it's been several months, I've learned 50-some songs, but I took it upon myself to learn them, come into the rehearsal, tell them what songs I knew. We knew in advance what we were going to rehearse, but no one in the group expected to be practicing at the rehearsal. And so we had 3 rehearsals before our first show, and no one came in not prepared for all of those songs. And if I, for instance, and I was one, I remember where there were 2 or 3 songs that I wasn't ready for, I warned them, I'm not ready for these. We played through them, and then I realized what I had to take back home, work on it back home. Come on. Now, if a band can do that, they can learn a large amount of music in a short amount of time. If they don't do that and they're expecting to be rehearsing or practicing at the rehearsal, it's probably going to take them weeks and weeks and weeks to be able to have enough music for a 3-hour show.
That's right. Now, do you feel that the local musicians have to read music, or can they just listen to music and play it? Or because you are a musician, which way do you feel is the best route to take?
You need, if you're a musician, people are expecting you to be able to do what's ever put in front of them.
Okay.
So I believe that part of being a musician is not just knowing notes, it's reading the music too. And if you can't play the music, you're locked out of a lot of circles. Okay. I also think there's a discipline. We were talking about the discipline of rehearsals.
Yes, and very important.
There's a discipline to practicing, and part of that is learning music.
I think one important part about reading music is if you have requests. That if you have the music in front of you and you know how to read it, then it goes better than if you had a request and had to think of the music in your head and what key is it in and how would we play it and does everybody know it. If you have the music on a sheet, you already know what key it's in. All you have to do is look at it and play it. I think things run smoother.
Yeah, this is true. And as you mentioned that, I can think of many times, and this happens more at private events and parties than at public events where you already know what you're going to play. But many times someone comes up, can you play this song? Now, the band may already know it or know it enough by ear, but if you have a book and you can pull it out, then everyone could play it if they know how to read the music.
That's correct.
And I know you can't get into the big leagues of music shows. You can't get into the Dave Matthews, the Santana. You either have to know what they want you to learn in advance and learn it because you don't know how to read, or you need to have that music in front of them. So you can't get beyond a certain point without being able to read your music. In fact, Wynton Marsalis does not hire musicians unless they know how to read, because he feels it's part of the discipline of learning an instrument. And if they haven't learned how to read, it means they just bypassed a whole dynamic of the industry.
So for bands starting in the basement and no one reads music, what should they do?
First of all, the band starting in the basement, let me just digress a little bit. Even the Frank Sinatra band that we put together, talking about arrangements, you could have had a great horn player audition for our band, but if they didn't know how to read music, we wouldn't have brought them into the band.
Right.
They need to read the music. And that's a band, doing things. If you're in the basement, the basement is where most bands start. If they're just playing covers, they think they can learn the covers. And if that's all they're going to do, then maybe they don't need to learn music to read. But if they want,
there's so much competition.
Yes, and if you want to get out of the basement and be able to do things without the restriction, you need to learn how to read. Now, a musician may say to me, I know how to read, but what they really mean is chords, chord sheets. That's not the same thing as reading music and reading the notes on a chart. I've seen a lot of people come into audition and they have these chord charts, and they're okay, but they're not getting the hits. They're not getting the nuances. They don't know when there's a retard. They don't know when there's a pause. Often they get flustered. So they compensate by listening to the track in advance. I know a lot of musicians who I've approached because I thought they were just great players and said, you want to write an original with me? And some of them have said, well, I'm not sure that I'm good enough. I'm good at copying and cloning the part, but I'm not quite sure that I could help you with an arrangement, and I can't read well enough to be able to help you write it. And so basically they've taken themselves out of the running on a project, and they still call themselves a professional musician. So they're a professional in what they do, but they're not a well-rounded professional musician. I hate to say that, but you're raising a really powerful point. Either you're going to do all of that or you're not going to do all of it. Now, a real contradiction to what I just said is Buddy Rich, who I studied with, did not know how to read music.
I would have never known that.
You see, he heard a song but he would prepare. He would learn it and learn it and learn it, and then go out there to the rehearsal and play it. There are a lot of drummers who do not know how to read. And they want to know in advance what they're doing, and they take their craft very seriously, but they learn it by ear. Not naming names. Well, I mentioned Buddy Rich because he's already got his name, but Louis Bellson knew how to read very well, and he wrote music, in fact. You see, there you go. You could write music, and you could write music for big band because he could write the chart.
That's correct.
Yeah, and he was great at it. He was able to do his thing. Buddy Rich was reliant on an arranger to arrange every single tune that he did. He could not write, though. And he never won an award for his music. And I think part of that is because you have a harder time getting an award for music if you're just playing the tune than if you've written the tune. And that can be something for a Facebook discussion. You know, should he have ever won an award? He never won an award for anything.
Wow.
Okay, considered the best drummer in the world to some, but never won an award for anything. But he could hear a song twice and play it in big band and know what he was doing. Louis Bellson, because he wrote music, was a little more musically creative. He knew how to take the brushes and combine brushes with sticks in a solo and things like this. Rich was pretty much a stick guy. He was awesome with the brushes, but I never really saw him in tunes where he would put the sticks down and pick up the brushes and then pick up the sticks again. Louis Bellson did that kind of stuff all the time in the middle of the same tune. So it's going to be, I think, among musicians an argument about the playing of the music, but my argument back is, if you know how to read music, what does it hurt you?
That's true.
And what other gigs can it get you?
Definitely.
Okay?
And that is important, yes.
So there you are with that. So that's a Pandora's box of a question. It's like asking a jazz drummer, should you play with match grip or conventional grip? You know, match grip is where both sticks are the same. And conventional is when you're playing a jazz grip. And I have my opinion on that, which is for jazz, you play the jazz grip. And for rock and roll, you play the match grip. Because there is a difference in sound, but there's going to be lots of different discussion. I think there's less discussion on the issue of should you hire a musician who can play but can't read? It's a really interesting question. And I think overall, when it comes to the serious touring groups that I'm in, you need to read.
Well, I think for musicians who could read, at rehearsal, you would automatically know when the changes come in. There would be no discrepancy.
When I was working with the Frank Sinatra stuff, before we knew where to get the charts from, I would listen to the music and I would write the charts myself. I would then learn the part and then put the chart away and play it. Because I needed to write it down to learn the part.
That's right.
You make me feel so young. You make me feel like spring has sprung. And every time I see you grin, I'm such a happy individual. The moment that you speak, I wanna run, play hide and seek. I wanna go and bounce the moon just like a toy balloon. You and I are just like a couple of tots running across the meadow, picking up lots of forget-me-nots. You make me feel so young.
Since we're talking about Frank Sinatra, that was a small clip from the Brian Chopra Jazz Project featuring Frank Sinatra Band.
That's right.
So, enough of the music question. I have a tendency to go on and on and on about stuff because I'm passionate about it. And Mickey, as we're talking to you out there, we're both learning too. So we're both talking too. And so I'll get into something, then you may have you may even have a question about what I said, or even a disagreement about what I'm saying.
That's right.
And we're here to talk about that. That's fine with me. So you just were saying you have a whole list of thoughts on your mind, and so tell me more.
Okay, let's talk about another artist, and his name is Soul Roots. You can also see his videos on YouTube and on the website, the
Yes.
Business of Music website.
Yes, tmbradioshow.com.
That's correct. Soul Roots. The Soul Roots Band performs a mix of New Orleans funk, raw blues, energetic rock, deep grooves, and Southern soul. Soul is a world-class guitarist, bassist, songwriter, and recording artist who began his musical experiences performing with roots, soul, blues, and funk. Luminaries such as Guitar Gabriel, Captain Luke, Cool John Ferguson, and others. And Soul Roots also has videos on YouTube and on our website as well.
So let's go out with some of him. Let's listen to some Soul Roots, and we'll meet y'all on the other side of this break.
Your love keep me going strong. Your love, whether I'm right or wrong. Your love is all that I need, 'cause you set me free.
So now we're back, and we talked about bands, and we talked about the fact that we're going to spotlight certain bands that we love, because part of what we want to do on the show, I can't reiterate it more, is explain the truth about the music business nationally, the truth about the music business locally, what's the good and what's the bad. And if there's a really good band, we're going to spotlight them, we're going to point them out. So in doing that, in our very first show, Mickey has come up with a few bands that she thinks are, the best bands you think? I'm going to put words in your mouth.
Some of my favorites, and I have many, many favorites. One is Little Royal and the Swing Masters, and Little Royal is now deceased, but he was very popular when he was alive. He was an American soul and R&B artist of the 1960s and 1970s.
When did he die?
He died in September 29th, 2016.
Okay,
so
just recently.
He is recent, and it's still in the minds and hearts of many of us. He was the half-brother of James Brown. Notable people who have performed with Little Roy include Teddy Pendergrass and Bobby Parker.
Where did he live?
He lived in Washington, D.C.
Okay.
He had a title track from his album Jealous, which reached number 15 on the Billboard R&B chart in August of 1972. His song Razor Blade was sampled by 16 artists, including Ice-T, Lord Finesse, and Jay Dilla.
So his death obviously affects his band. But
Yes.
now his band is still going on?
His band is still going on. And yesterday they had a memorial service for him, and it was hosted by Wilbur Fletcher, the owner-manager of the Dynamic Superiors, David Cole, lead guitarist and vocalist, and Reverend Brian Hamilton, pastor of Westminster Presbyterian Church. And they invited all of Little Royal's loved ones, friends, and fans to come together in fellowship and in remembrance to share their prayers and appreciation for such a great man. Over the decades, Little Royal performed at numerous clubs and theater gigs in the U.S. and Canada. Royal's music contributions will live on forever through his music and by all who adored him.
Well, let's take a listen.
You know, I'm not jealous because I'm mean, honey. I'm jealous because I love you. And I don't want nobody else to have you. Now, you know what? If you got someone that you really love, you don't mind standing looking that person dead in the eye and tell them you really love them. How many of you women out there that's been in love before? You know, really you love that someone so much, there was nothing in the world that you wouldn't do for them. You'd cook the food, put it on the table for them, wash their dirty clothes. Nothing in the world that you wouldn't do for them.
We are going to have on the tmbradioshow.com page videos of these artists, of the various artists we're going to be talking about. We're also going to play a little bit of those on the show. But, of course, you can't see video here. But one of the things that I want clarified, in the 70s clip,
Yes.
he's singing.
Yes.
So who's singing now?
Now his band consists of Doug McKenzie, tenor saxophone, Barry Brady, keyboards, David Cole, vocals and lead guitar, DeAndre Howard, trumpet, Steve Walker, drums, Michael Jenkins, bass guitar, and I'm not sure what role that Wilbur Fletcher will have now that Royal is gone as far as managing the band.
So we've just mentioned this. I will say, since you plugged Nexus, that we're also going to have video clips of my band.
I like Nexus.
Talk about a biased radio show. Well, put it this way. I think that Nexus is awesome. Why don't you all listen to it and judge for yourself, and you can let me know what you think of
Okay.
it. Hey, let's hear from people. We have a lot of video clips online, but you can see the link to that on tmbradioshow.com. And what's interesting about that band is it's really a band about authentic classic rock and rocking out. It really is about rocking out. We're having a good time. And it's both a party band and a concert band.
Yes.
So maybe we'll play a little bit of that
I had a great time at the show with Nexus.
in the next segment. So what's another band that you
A band
selected?
and artist.
Yes.
Another one would be Earl Carter. And he is a musician, producer, and label owner. He is the owner and CEO at E. Carter Enterprises. And he gives a great show.
Okay.
He is a Washington, D.C.-based guitarist, bassist, and producer whose multifaceted talent, professionalism, and star quality has officially put him in the class of Billboard recording artist. Over the years, Earl has performed with many artists, local, national, and international. As a freelance musician, he has worked with Marcus Johnson, Allison Williams, Barbie Lyle, and many more, to include Regina Bell, Angela Bofield, Maya, Selena, and Cy Smith. Cy Smith, I know her father, he used to sing with the Dynamic Superiors. Earl has also worked with Bob Baldwin, Tony Terry, and many more. So he just has a whole host of experience in the music world.
Mm-hmm. What do you like best about his music?
I like best about his music that everybody is organized, everybody gels, they play well together. He sings. Earl is also a performer. I even have photos of him on the floor playing the lead guitar with his teeth. I mean, they really give a good show.
Let's take a listen and see what you're talking about. How many people are in that band?
It varies because if he's playing like a cocktail hour, then there may only be 3 of them. So it would be Earl, a pianist, and a drummer.
Okay.
But if he were playing at a different venue, then it may be 5 to 7 pieces to the band.
Okay.
I also like to hear him sing.
Do you hear a big difference in the sound between the smaller group and the larger group?
There is a big difference in the sound, but the smaller group is appropriate for the particular venue when you're having dinner or when it's just a small crowd of people or like a wine or happy hour.
Okay.
And that's good for the
So
trio.
we're going to have to give some examples
Okay.
or find some examples of that for people to hear. From the label side of it, I get a lot of people who are asking for a band, and then they say, well, is this a 7-piece band, a 10-piece band, or a trio?
Right.
It's funny. People think of trios as cocktail bands.
Yeah.
But Nexus is a trio. It is certainly not a cocktail band.
Definitely not.
Okay, so it's fascinates me people's perception of the band and what you're going to get versus the type of music you're playing and what really works. I almost think that the better the musicians are, the fewer you need to put a band together.
That could be true.
Now, it doesn't mean you don't want the whole group there. But for instance, with my Sinatra tribute band, Sinatra played with a 17-piece big band.
That's right.
And this is another story. We took the Frank Sinatra tunes and we went with those who had the original, who managed the original compositions, the original sheet music for the Frank Sinatra music, and we obtained all of this music and then transposed it from a 17-piece band to a 7 or 8-piece band. And the reason why we did that was, number one, I did not want to manage a 17-piece band selfishly. Right. Number two, it's too expensive. When talking to outsiders about what we were doing, I also realized from the music industry that most colleges and high schools were not working with Frank Sinatra tunes because they were all big band tunes and they didn't have a big band or they didn't want to spend the money assembling that. So people are telling us now to provide the music that we've now transposed for the 7 or 8-piece band to the high schools and colleges, and maybe it'll perk interest.
Oh, that's a good idea.
So this is my Frank Sinatra tribute band as an 8-piece.
I've got the world on a string, and I'm sitting on a rainbow. Got the string around my finger. What a world, what a life, I'm in love. I got a song that I sing, I can make that rain go anytime I move my finger. Lucky me, can't you see I'm in love? Life is a beautiful thing. As long as I hold a string, I'd be a silly so-and-so if I should ever let it go. I got the world on a string, sitting on a rainbow. Got the string around my finger. What a world, what a life, I'm in love.
If you go to YouTube or if you go to, again, tmbradioshow.com, you're going to find links to this Frank Sinatra band, and people are drawn to Frank Sinatra music, and they're drawn to Peter. They're there. Now, one of the little secrets of this is that I'm actually drumming for that band. I never planned on that, but what happened is we were looking for musicians who knew how to play that type of music. It's not Frank Sinatra music, is not big band, it's not swing, it's not contemporary jazz. It's a combination of ballad music and big band music. And so we had to find artists, musicians who knew how to play this. We went through a number of artists, a number of musicians, horn players, bass players, trombone players, in order to find people who actually could handle doing this. And it took me about 8 months to learn how to play the music that I had to learn to do this. And so now we have that band. And so you have a 7 or 8-piece band that's playing this music, and people seem to really love it. The reason why I say 7 or 8-piece is because it depends on the horn section.
Right.
And we have 3 horn players who collectively together play trumpet, trombone, alto, tenor, flute, baritone, all of these different instruments. And so depending on what song they're doing, it depends on how many instruments they pick up. So sometimes it's really an 8 or 9-piece band with what they're doing, and sometimes it's a 7-piece band with what
So
they're
you're
doing.
saying that the horn players would play more than one type of horn?
During a song,
Okay.
yes. And that was how we could collectively make sure that everyone was working all the time, because if there wasn't trombone in every song, and there
Right.
wasn't flute in every song, but there was enough of it where all three are working all the time to make that happen. And yeah, and that's another band that I'm proud of because of the quality of how it sounds as a group. And we're looking to educate DC in that music as well. It's really a band that does national things, but we're looking at the local to perform because we want to expose people to it.
Right. So some of the topics that we're going to be talking about in the future that I am excited about are
Are you more excited about the topics, or are you more excited about the bands? What about this show?
I'm excited about the topics, the bands, the show, but some focus points that I'm excited about are to discuss unique stories and experiences related to the music business, to demonstrate how songs are written and performed in different cultures, to create an outlet for bands to perform and be heard live on radio. I can't wait for that.
Mm-hmm.
And band from the basement. I think that's very important because a lot of bands do start in the basement.
We touched about that.
Yes,
you asked
we
your
did.
question about writing music and reading music. It's a huge thing because here's what happens. Most bands start in the basement or the garage or a room. When we say a basement band, we're talking about some place where nobody hears you. Because they don't know where they're going. They're trying to figure out what their sound is. They're trying to figure out where their muse is. They're trying to figure out if they have chemistry. They don't know any of these things. In fact, they don't even know where they're going to be playing next. And we are out of time for this hour. I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're going to pick this up on the next hour exactly where we left off on the issue of the basement band because it is so important. Good night, everybody.